Hey, welcome to a e-bike news segment. It's been a while since I've done one of these, and because it's the beginning of the year 2023, I thought I'd do what's going on in the e-bike industry and what I think will potentially happen with as far as the industry as a whole. Prices, will prices go up? Will prices come down? I mean, I really have a lot of data to go over, and I'm going to give you a little spoiler alert. I honestly think that prices will be continuing to climb, with a caveat to that, which I'll explain a little bit more. I was going through Electric Bike Action magazine. They sent me these copies, and just looking at the new industry trends that they're starting to announce and the different styles of bikes. And I thought, it's pretty cool of what we're seeing. Also, we're seeing some trikes being launched into the market here. So I decided I wanted to go ahead and see what can we talk about as a whole of what's going on in the industry. So let's go ahead and get started with what we see here. I'm going to go ahead and bring up some of the information that kind of brings into light about what a lot of people have been wondering, what's going on with the industry as far as should I buy a bike this year? Should I upgrade the bike that I have? Or should I wait? What's going to happen? What technologies are coming out? So first and foremost, throughout last year, 2022, we had a lot of issues with supply chain. People couldn't get bikes. And then all of a sudden, a whole flood of bikes started coming in. New bikes started coming in, new technologies, but prices were staying high. And one of the reasons that we had issues with was the freight costs and basically the container costs that we were seeing come across the board that were actually absolutely ridiculous. Being that, let's take a look at here. This is basically the price of a container. Lately it was at about $2,000 a container. Now it's a 40-foot container. Anywhere, I think you can hold between like 60 to 100 bikes depending on the type of size of the bikes and how they squeeze it in there. But for the most part, container prices were as high as almost $20,000 for a container. So it was cost 10 times more than what it's actually cost today. Today, a container, to fill it up and to get it shipped out, is only about $2,000. So that's a huge difference from $20,000 down to $20,000, for a bunch of bikes that are coming over. In fact, I've heard from some other supply chain directors that it's actually gone down below $2,000. Some of the problems being they can't fill containers, or ships are not taking the containers because they don't have a full ship. So you have this order booked, ready to go, and then all of a sudden the ship captain says, we're not going to go ahead and launch this ship. There's just not enough containers, so they have to find another ship to move it over and launch. So it's causing these delays that are coming in, but it's not causing a supply chain shortage like it used to, and shipping prices have come down. So that's one thing that's very optimistic for the prices of our bikes and what we have coming up here. The other thing we have here now is that we have to take a look at what's going on with the trends. People are beginning to really take notice of e-bikes. Back in 2019, when I first started the channel and I was telling people I started an e-bike channel, they asked, what's an e-bike? Now you can't get away from people saying, when I say I have an e-bike, they talk about how cool it is and if they already have one, or what they should get if they're looking for one. So we see this whole shift in basic common knowledge about e-bikes, and they're really beginning to take a lot of, getting people's attention. And one of the reasons being is, of course, because our gas prices had come so high. So now that we are seeing gas prices starting to come down because of looming inflation worries and just productivity starting to kind of cut back there, we are still actually at a still really high rate for gas. The other issue with that is, of course, we have technologies that are actually getting better for batteries. But more so, what we're starting to see is that car prices are still exceptionally high. There's still a shortage on that. And I want to talk about this 3-minute battery. What it's starting to talk about is regard to it's not out yet, but the technologies that are being progressive. It's a race right now for battery companies to make batteries that are faster, more efficient in charging, last longer, safer, all that stuff that's coming out here. So we have this really great article that just really short. It talks about how somebody from, some Harvard technology came up with this solid state battery that's going to be able to take some charges very quickly. And this is, like I said, just technology being launched. These batteries are not out there for the mass for commercial use yet, but they're getting a lot of money to go ahead and start moving forward with that. So that's really an interesting shift as far as focus now of technologies. I mean, batteries have always been really something everybody wanted to improve on, but because of electric vehicles like Teslas and the cars out there, we're really starting to see these ramp up. We also see motors and companies like SRAM now absorbing other companies that are more into the EV market. Or this one here is talking about SRAM and how they are now buying a motor company. And that's going to be something that was going to be really interesting to see, because they already make some really high quality parts. Now, talking about SRAM, there's one thing that's really interesting I heard about them regarding the bike industry as a whole. There was a time that one of the reasons why bike prices were so high was because of components like what SRAM supplied, as far as derailleurs and cogs and even brakes and hydraulic systems. I mean, all of this combined, they were having a hard time keeping up, which was holding up a bike. You know, it's been said, you can have a bike that's 99% complete, but until you get that one part to make it a full bike, they can't ship it. So you had this whole backlog of bikes waiting for just derailleurs or brakes or just cogs. I mean, there's so many things that were backing up, just single components, because manufacturers couldn't keep up. So what they did was they started ramping up their manufacturing, you know, right, starting tooling and more. And now we have I wouldn't say a glut, but we have a lot of over inventory that a lot of these companies are actually trying to push. There's an article or a YouTube video that I had watched about a bike owner who said that they were even offered to go ahead and give discounts when in the past it was absolutely forbidden for them to drop the price below the manufacturer's stated price. So we're seeing now parts available, bikes being able to be flooded out, which is a trend I have seen. There's been a couple of bikes that I've gotten recently. Now it's been storming here in Southern California, so I haven't been able to go ahead and go out and test or review bikes. My garage gets flooded when it rains, and it's been flooding really bad now, so I can't even unbox a bike until, you know, the rains are completely stopped. And during that time, though, as I'm looking at these bikes that are coming in, one thing I noticed is that yes, the prices have gone up, but the components are actually getting a lot better. So we're going to start seeing bikes with better components, because I think of the excess components that are available now that they can actually give, like hydraulic brakes for the price of mechanical, which means mechanical brakes could be dropping in price as well. We're starting to see this type of trend. Just better components, better parts, better batteries, and yet prices are not as going up as high as you would normally see in the past. So we're going to see better bikes coming out there, and that's a natural shift of an industry like any type of vehicle industry that's out there. So let's go ahead and take a look at the next article that we have coming through. They're talking about how the micromobility models falling through the cracks, where people are not really paying attention as much to the smaller vehicles that are out there, but we are seeing like scooters out there now taking over as well. So we're going to see a lot more regulation between the e-bike industry, the scooter industry, and the bicycle industry as a whole, because one of the problems that we're now having is infrastructure. And that I'm going to talk about a little bit later, as far as how here in the US, we are just not made to handle the amount of e-bikes that are flooding the market, and it's becoming dangerous. There's a lot of accidents that are actually happening, a lot of kids that are actually on these things that shouldn't be, or they're not properly taught how to ride these things. And yeah, it's been causing a lot of not injuries to the riders, but to pedestrians and actually just people around them. And that's what's becoming really scary. I honestly think what we're also going to see is bikes changing to match. In fact, I'm already seeing it. We used to have a lot of bikes that were actually rated class 3 that go 28 miles an hour, and they actually went 28 and more. And now more and more I'm seeing they're rated class 3 up to 28, but most of them only hit 26 and 27 miles an hour, which means these bike manufacturers are getting smart to the fact that they need to make sure they stay within the regulated ranges, or they're probably going to get fined, or harder yet, they won't be able to sell their product. So we're seeing a lot more restrictions already happening voluntarily to their own bikes before actually new regulations starting to, or legislatures start to make regulations that will cut what's gone out there. Now, we have been very blessed here in the United States to have bikes that are allowed to go up to 20 miles an hour as class 2 and be ridden on trails. Even class 1, we can actually pedal up to 20 miles an hour. There's no throttle on them. But how long will that last when people still keep getting hurt because of responsibility, or because the infrastructure is not made to go in and have that? I talked a little bit of, or mentioned e-trikes earlier when I made the announcement or at the opening of this video, and that's another thing we're going to start to see more of. Lectric XP has launched their announcement actually of a trike. It's only on pre-order. It's going to be coming out next month, but check out this price, $14.99 for a 3-wheel trike, and it has differentials in the back, which is actually pretty cool. I've never been a big fan of promoting trikes in the past because of the rollover factor. If they're not dangerous, if you're actually aware and you're very cautious about how you're going to be making turns. I don't know how a differential would actually be, because I've only heard about non-differentials actually causing some of the issues that are out there. But this bike or trike is something I definitely want to get to see up close. If I get a chance, I want to go ahead and see if I can review one of these. But this is going to be, I think, a game changer for e-mobility. There are so many people out there who are intimidated about the bike factor on it, and if they can eliminate the fear of the balancing, we may actually see a whole trend or fad or increase of electric vehicles out there on our bike trails. The problem I'm seeing with this now is that our infrastructure is already not set up for e-bikes and bikes to be sharing the path and trails because they're not wide enough. There are places on my trails where we should not be passing, and it should be single file both ways, and put something that's double wide on that. I think we're going to see our infrastructure having to increase nationwide to make things bigger and better for our ride, because not only does Lectric have a trike, but so does Rad. These are the top 2 e-bike selling companies right now in the United States as far as their bikes that are out there. And check this one out, it's $24.99. So I don't know, I mean, Rad, they do have a higher price. They have a lot of their bikes are higher priced in general, but they are the biggest or the #1 selling company of e-bikes in the US right now. So they can do it. I mean, they have this great customer base and loyal following and great brand, and they're also now, their infrastructure is now growing to where they have servicing companies and even local stores that can actually help sell these things. I think the beach areas are going to have these in a lot of places, and delivery. But the fact that Lectric has actually come out, I'm going to come back to them. I have not, I've ridden some of the Rad bikes before, but as far as reviewing, I'm obviously a fan of the Lectric company. I've been invited out to see their place. They have a huge customer support infrastructure actually set up to go in and support their customers, and that's really important for the e-bike industry that's growing. So what I'm also thinking about what's happening to the industry is that although we have a lot of direct-to-consumer companies that are actually shipping directly from China into the US warehouses where they just distribute from there, the support is going to be even more and more important. And I think that we're actually going to start to see some of these direct-to-consumer e-bike companies out there start to go away. The ones that have already established themselves, reputable, and are able to go ahead and make sure they're taking care of customers even without US support infrastructure set in place like they do, like Lectric, where they're owned and operated in the US. All e-bikes, 100% of e-bikes are manufactured in China right now. If somebody actually can tell me otherwise, even the electric bike company out there, people say they assemble the bikes here, but they are all manufactured. We do not manufacture tires here in the US, so parts have to come from China. That's just the way it is right now. So when you have a company that is actually based here in the US, though, they get their bikes and their support is here in the US, and their inventory, everything is already here. Their ability to support customers is a lot easier. There are some of the companies that I've actually done reviews for or worked with. They are great at supporting us, and whenever I do need a part to repair a bike or get a replacement, something something that gets damaged, it takes about 2 to 3 weeks, sometimes even longer, for them to ship a part. And sometimes they don't even have it. So that's another issue that we always have to keep in mind about these companies and where the industry is going to be changing. I think it's going to be like the auto industry. There were hundreds and hundreds of car brands when the auto industry first started to come into inception, and now we have just a few big major brands that are out there. So that's something that we also need to look at. Now, another thing I wanted to bring up is the pricing of batteries. Lithium is, of course, what's in all of our batteries here that we have here. And this is the price of lithium that we had back in October of 2020. Now, this is the raw material lithium, and we are looking at about a price of about 40,000. Now we're at 482,000. That's 12 times over the amount of price just for lithium batteries. And of course, this is because the car industry like Tesla, Rivian, all of those are all using lithium batteries right now. So we are seeing this putting some upward pressure on e-bikes as a whole. So hopefully that new battery technology that we have out there coming out one day will make a better positive effect on the overall pricing of bikes in itself, because a lot of times batteries cost anywhere from $500 to $800. That's like a third of the price of most bikes out there. Get that price down, we can actually do a lot better. Also, everybody wants longer range, so we're going to see batteries that can actually take us longer ranges, or bikes that are just fitted to hold bigger batteries. And I'm already seeing this today. Most of the bikes that come do not come with less than 14 amp hour batteries. There are some, of course, still being made. They don't need to go as far, but most of them right now, the investments are being made for models that have these long-term batteries on there. So that's really cool that we're going to be seeing move forward. The other part we have here is we still have a car shortage here in the United States. So as people's cars start to break down, or people don't want to drive as much, so we have gas being super high right now, even though it's coming down and people are excited that we have like $4.80 a gallon gas, because it used to be close to almost $6. $4.80 is still exceptionally high when we had gas prices down in the $3, less than $3 range before COVID. So we still have a lot of gas price pressure, and we also have now the car shortage that's out there. My mom went out to go ahead and she needed to have her car replaced last week, and she had to order one. It's not going to be in for another 6 weeks, hopefully, is what they're saying. They have to order cars now because it takes so long to come up. And there is still a microchip shortage, or there's still a car shortage right now. And a lot of news, this is why I have the screen up here, is still saying we're going to have this shortage all the way through 2023 and maybe even beyond. It's going to be better. Prices will start coming down. Used cars prices are coming down. But one thing I wanted to talk about was inflation. So we are having an inflation issue right now. And I want to bring up pre-COVID. December 2018 to December 2019, year over year, inflation for bikes and equipment here was only 1.7%. Okay, and if we look at cars and transportation, new cars, we had a 0.1% year over year. This is December 18 to 20. So that was really, really a small issue, nothing really to be concerned about, right? Then we come into looking at December of 2020 to December of 2021. Bike prices jumped 7.8%. Of course, this is COVID. We had this whole bike shortage started to happen, and that's 7.8% year over year prices that had happened. And that's from 2020 to 2021. Our car prices started to really skyrocket. New cars, new trucks, 12%, 11% year over year started to jump up there. So we already saw the pressure and the problem that's already coming up here. Now, if we look at this last CPI report, the inflation report that just came out, bicycles had gone up another 2.9%. So if you look 2 years ago, 7%, and then you add on another like 3%, we've had over a 10% increase. And I've seen this across all the bikes. Major companies have all increased a lot of their prices, about $200 on average to $250, and that's about a 10% increase there. The ones that have been able to keep it down, they still have higher prices, but in general, they're still doing a really good job at keeping down. Car prices are still at 6%. You know, so we're still, I think the only thing that we all saw was used car had finally dropped 8.8. The used car market was just absolutely ridiculous. So if you look at here, this is the used car market prior to this was 37% increase year over year. So you have a whole, I mean, if you're still thinking about it though, 37% increase year over year, and then an 8% drop, that's still a huge increase in price over 2 years ago for the used car market. So we are still looking at a problematic market as far as price goes. Bicycles this year from 2021 to 2022. Now this is December because we're still in January. So we had last year's report come out, 3% increase range there. It's still going to be a problem for us when you talk about people who need cars and need better ways to figure out how to do transportation. Now, there's also like what do you call local transportation costs that are all in here. Some of those have also gone up. So public transportation. And those are things that we all need to consider when we're looking at what is going to happen with prices throughout the rest of this year. The one benefit is now a lot of people who are ordering a lot of their extra bikes to come in, they have higher inventories, which means they do need to go ahead and make space to get a lot of their inventory brought down. We had this whole news about Walmart and Target during the Christmas season having an influx of major inventory that came in, and sales were just kind of weak. Right now, with the winter season, we are seeing that bike sales normally slow down. This is a trend that actually usually always happens. So in the meantime, what we're going to do is, let's look at the Google Trends on e-bikes. And I want to bring this over so you can see what we're looking at as far as e-bikes. And this is how many searches people are actually doing for e-bikes on Google, and this is a great indicator of, and what I like to do is also see Electric e-bikes as a company, because this is tells you the shopping history. So it follows the trend of typically of regular e-bike sales and also of what people are looking at. Of course, you see some spikes when they actually launch. Let's see if Rad Power Bikes, yes, has a topic of comes up as well. So we have 3 different trends that we can actually take a look at. Rad is actually not showing up very much, but as a whole, what you're seeing here is that we do see a typical trend that starts in January that's going to drop down, and then starting right now, we're going to start seeing the ramp up of e-bike demand. And when we start to see that, hopefully what we'll start to see also is new models starting to come out, which will bring pressure. And what's going to happen is, so this is one of my other predictions, is older models will drop in price. And as long as they have enough inventory of that they need to keep on moving, we're going to see prices drop on older models as they make room for newer models. Because, like I said, we are seeing newer models still coming into the industry pretty hard right now. The card shortage news, like I said, we went over that. And here's one thing I keep an eye on Tesla, is because they are, of course, the leader in EV news. I mean, everybody's talking about Teslas, and right now they did a huge price drop of like $17,000 on one of their models, and that's a big news actually in general, because Elon Musk had always said he's never going to drop the price of his Teslas, and at the end of 2022, the last few weeks, he dropped the price $7,500 on the models that they have in stock to get them moving as quickly as possible. So if you took delivery of whatever was in stock on certain models, you could get a $7,500 discount, which was huge. Even though January 1st there was going to be a tax credit given for all EVs that they were selling at that time, you would have to wait till, of course, filing your taxes of 2023 in 2024 to get your money. So he pushed it up earlier to get that. Well, on top of that, now we are actually seeing them doing more price drops, and he does not hold back in actually saying when he does think something's going to actually drop for even his company. He's just very straightforward about it, and he does anticipate sales of cars to go down quite a bit. The other problem is he also thinks manufacturing is going to have some issues, and delivery is going to be a problem too. So we are also seeing that in China right now. They are having, or they're coming out of it, thank goodness, they're coming out of their COVID issues right now. So they're not stuck with the lockdown problems that they had. But the problem is now that they're not locked down as much, everybody's getting sick. So their manufacturing has slowed down. And don't forget, they're going into their Chinese New Year. So for those of you who don't know, when the Chinese New Year starts to happen there in China, the country shuts down for about 6 weeks. People travel for a week to go home from the city to their faraway places. They go ahead and have their celebrations for a couple of weeks, and then they have to travel back a week. So basically, a lot of just manufacturers and factories shut down. So we're going to see that stop. But most of the companies that are out here already plan for that ahead of time. So we already have these bikes already on their way in there. We should be actually getting a whole bunch of bikes coming out, which is probably why the trikes are not going to be announced to February 20. They're probably already on the water, on their way in. And that's why Electric is actually pre-ordered on February, anticipating probably it's going to be a little later. We'll see what happens with this, but I think this is going to be a huge hit. There's a lot of people that cannot ride e-bikes because of either balancing, and that's why the step-throughs have actually been doing so well, is because it is targeted these bikes, the demographic is just older, and a lot of them can't swing their legs over. So these, but of course, there's a lot of people who have spouses that can't ride, and this is going to be a safer way for them to get on and ride together when a bike wasn't an option before. Cool thing about this one too is also it's foldable. So that's another thing I think we're going to start to see is a lot of continuous foldable bikes to be more mobile by putting them into cars, so we can go further with them by using them as a second mode of transportation along with the first. And that still seems to be a big trend. Smaller bikes are still going to be brought out there. But that being said, we are also seeing a lot of higher end bikes being made out there. So here's another article. They're talking about electric bikes. What the seeing about these, the demand is basically strong. That's what we're continuously hearing from all these other people. The e-bike infrastructures right now, again, we're having all of the news talk about how outdated it is. I was shocked though. I was in actually New York at the end of October, as first time visiting there, and I was blown away at how much the city does accommodate for bicycle riding, and LA does not at all. In fact, a lot of the suburban areas in LA now are starting to have, or outskirts of downtown LA, out in the suburbs like where I'm at, we do actually start to have a lot more bike trails, and they're blocking off bike lanes with cones to make it safer so cars don't get into those lanes ahead of time. So we are starting to see some infrastructure being put in there. It's still going to be a long way, but we'll see what happens as we start moving forward and more bikes become necessary, especially with global warming and other issues that are big concerns with a lot of people out there. I think bikes are going to still move forward as a big benefit for everybody to, one, get more exercise, but also be a great way of transportation without gas vehicles. We're talking about trends here. We still see a whole bunch of trends globally, as the e-bike market is going to still continue to be strong regardless of inflation. I pulled up Eventin because I want to see their prices. They're one that I've also followed their prices a long time, and they've done a great job in making some very, very affordable bikes that are of very high quality as well. But along that trend is because of their affordability, it caught my eye, and I remember what prices were before. Their prices have gone up by about $200 across the board on a lot of their bikes, and maybe even a little more on some of the others. But as you notice on some of their bikes, they also have just better styling on the bikes, a lot more integration. That's one thing. Battery integrated bikes are going to be more of a trend. You're going to see less of batteries attached to the outside. In fact, I don't think Aventon has anything. Everything is integrated on all of their bikes out there. What I am seeing though is I'm beginning to see we're seeing less of the road bikes. And they're fun bikes to ride, but they're not as comfortable. And of course, being the demographic or the bigger demographic of the riders that are on here are older, a lot more step-throughs are going to be more of a norm out there. A lot of the stigma of step-throughs being only for mostly female riders has completely changed, where it's more for all riders now. It's just easier. I mean, this cinch step-through is really popular amongst male and female riders, even though the male people were used to say that it would be only for a female rider in the past, and maybe a cinch foldable would be something of an option, but it's not. That's not that way anymore. So that's another reason why I think trikes will be good, because they're very accessible. But the other reason being is that the foldable bikes are a lot easier to commute with, when you actually can use your car along with it by throwing it in the trunk of your car. And prices are still great. I mean, we're still seeing just designs being better, but with the price increases, we're seeing higher quality parts. Again, like I said, to be able to have hydraulic brakes on there at the prices that we've been getting them are fantastic. Area 13, which is the Blackbird that I had originally bought, was actually we're going to the all electric bikes here. When I had bought the Blackbird, mine was I bought it at $24.99 price. I mean, it was the first launch, and he's still keeping his prices quite low here, but he has a more classic look. And that's another thing too, is we're actually going to see bikes that actually look a lot cooler. The designs that are coming out are actually pretty amazing on this. Kyle at Area 13 also has a trike, and he's been selling this for a while. The thing about this trike that I think is going to be also really big is that in New York, when I was there, a lot of these guys were delivery people. I mean, that's most of the bikes I saw riding around there were a lot of delivery people using these and lined up everywhere, just using and carrying quite a big load. I can see this being another way for, if they can make batteries that can last longer. Now, if you think about the way that this bike is made, or the trike is made, we can actually have these multi-batteries being put on there to actually go a lot further as well. So I think this is going to be something, a big trend that's going to still continue to move forward. We have Rad's bikes here as well. Again, these prices have, Rad has really gone up a lot in prices. I think their first bikes were in the $1,500 range, the Rad Rovers, and now we're looking at this is okay. So this is a folding. So the folding bikes are a little less expensive because smaller tires. That's pretty much what I have with regard to the industry and what I think is going to be happening. I'd love to hear what you guys think. What are your thoughts? What are your comments on what's going to be happening with the industry? What changes do you think are going to be happening? And what can we expect with infrastructure in the United States? I'm very curious to know what you guys' thoughts are. Thank you so much for watching. We will be having some more review bikes coming up. We will also be having some how-to videos planned out this year. As soon as the weather gets a little better, I'll be out on the road again. Thank you guys so much for your support and watching. Here's to a very, very safe 2023. Have fun, and I will see you guys in the next video.